Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. We have Gabe Frank here, CEO and founder of Arcade. They run an NFT liquidity marketplace that helps you borrow and lend against valuable NFT assets. Gabe, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Really excited to learn more about you and what you got going on. But just to jump right into it, what were you doing before you started Arcade?
Yeah, so before I was at Arcade, I was working in the crypto industry for about 4 years at two different startups. One was a custodian for institutional like hedge funds and exchanges and banks and fintechs. So that custodian held Bitcoin and Ethereum and other cryptos for these large institutions. And that's really where I met kind of the entire crypto industry, met the big players, the landscape of crypto, learned about different projects and how everybody was using crypto. So that was like a really good education and entrance
Yeah.
into the digital asset world for me. And then after that, I worked at a different crypto startup called Curv, ended up being acquired by PayPal
Yeah.
about 8 months after I joined. And then that's when I got into NFTs and started collecting and realizing that I could build something
Yeah.
in this space that had some impact. And oddly enough, before I entered crypto, I was in a family business working with my dad in a chain of pawn shops
Oh
in
wow.
Texas. So I
So
was actually lending against like physical, non-fungible
yeah.
assets like Rolexes and diamonds and
Right.
electronics and tools, kind of anything, guns.
Yeah.
And yeah, my dad ended up selling that business. It got acquired, and then
Yeah.
that's when I got into crypto.
Wow, that's great. It seems like you were kind of already running with the NFT space before you even jumped into actually the digital assets. But why NFTs? What kind of interested you about those smart contracts in particular versus other blockchain protocols, tokens, and all the other players in the landscape? What about NFTs got you excited?
Yeah, so I was involved in it all, like Bitcoin, Ethereum,
Yeah.
different using different protocols in DeFi. And then in 2020, I got involved in this project that was using NFTs, like one of the first ones. And I started collecting these things and getting really interested in some of the artworks that were being minted as
Yeah.
NFTs.
Yeah.
And it was like really cool to own something online that was actually digitally scarce. And I'd never been like an art collector in real life, but doing
Yeah.
it online, where you actually have direct ownership and a piece of what the artist created
Yeah.
as your own IP. I thought this would be a new asset class, and the industry would grow and NFTs would capture billions in value going forward. And so yeah, it was like opportunistic, and it just fit well with my background
Yeah.
and kind of understood the market. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's interesting. I just went to there's an NFT conference in LA here, and it was amazing what the artists were doing. But I was also thinking about like, man, I feel like it's such surface level, scratching the surface on the technology and how you can actually utilize it. So, in regards to what you're doing at Arcade, tell me a little bit about the borrowing process. What is it to borrow against an NFT? Because I don't know if a lot of people kind of understand the concept and how to utilize kind of that component of it if you own one.
Yeah, definitely. So, if somebody owns an artwork on chain, which is an NFT, it could be an artwork, it could be a profile picture, like a Bored Ape or a
Yeah,
CryptoPunk.
yeah,
Really, these things are today they're like digital country clubs.
yeah.
They're like passes to digital country clubs, and there's enough collective value behind these assets that there's secondary bids on the market. So basically, we can value these assets, provide a valuation to the borrower, and then they simply log on, sign into the dApp with their Web3 wallet, select which assets they want to use as part of a loan, and then they deposit into the protocol. A lender funds the loan, and they get the money, and the NFTs get locked up into our protocol. So really, what we built was this like escrow and settlement system. So that we could enable liquidity against
Yeah,
this big new asset class.
yeah,
And yeah, so a couple clicks, and people have borrowed millions of dollars with on
wow,
their sort of monkey pictures.
yeah. They're monkey pictures. That's hilarious. Who are the lenders? Who are you working with that takes these assets and then allows and lends out certain amounts of money to the borrowers?
Yeah, so it's definitely like a crypto native audience. So we have a lender network that we work with that's a mix of institutional lenders, retail lenders and crypto, like Nexo is a big lender in our platform, DAOs, high net worth individuals. Really, we basically open it up to the entire world. Anybody who wants to be a lender can now lend against these assets in a decentralized way. But we do have a lender network that you know, they're crypto native and they at least know what these assets are and how they can be valued.
Yeah. Do you think this is going to change, or just add another way to borrow money, you know, and lending in the future?
Definitely. I mean, I still think of our protocol that we're building as like infrastructure for this new Web3 economy. Like we had one use case for a borrower was he got a loan against a Bored Ape and he used it as a down payment for a house that he was buying.
Wow.
So it is sort of like this alternative like ecosystem building that's probably not going to be integrated into the mainstream financial ecosystem anytime soon.
Sure.
But these like new Web3 rails have billions of volume are going through these protocols that it's becoming like too big to ignore. So I do think Web3 on-chain payment rails and settlement and escrows is eventually all going to happen on-chain with these protocols.
How far out do you think, in terms of years or months or any amount of time, will it be in the kind of mainstream way to borrow and lend money?
Well, I think if NFTs continue to capture value, like right now, the market cap of lendable NFTs is like 5 to 10 billion. And there's been about 500 million in loans against NFTs. So it's still a really small asset class compared to other asset classes. It's a niche industry within crypto. So I think we're 5 to 7 years out for these protocols really to be used by the mainstream, where like maybe you have a bank that's plugged into a protocol in the back end and banks become just front ends for on-chain protocols and all this activity. So there's a lot of benefits that come with using like protocols and Web3 rails, which is transparency, it's transparent collateral, it's everything's on-chain, like loan term sheets, master loan agreements. It's all handled by the blockchain, and so it eliminates the need for a lot of these intermediaries. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
When you say intermediaries, what do you mean? If you could define it well, is it like, you know, if I'm a borrower who, you know, in a traditional sense doesn't have an NFT or doesn't have an asset to stake for, you know, some kind of loan, you know, and I'm going off of credit score and you know, income and things like that, that kind of information. Who is the intermediary in that sense versus if I have the asset and I can just borrow against it? I guess I'm curious on what the intermediary means in particular.
Yeah, so basically with our protocol, we're the company that developed the protocol, but we don't actually have to custody and take possession of any of the assets that are used as collateral. So it's all governed by the smart contracts themselves. So, you know, we've done about 26 million in loans without the need for a bank or for ACH or for credit checks. It's all just based off the collateral itself that's sitting in the wallet that's connected to the dApp, to the application.
Wow. I was talking to another founder about, you know, kind of the evolution the NFTs will see. One theory I have is that it's going to be used as just like verification for documents. You know, like I have my birth certificate as a NFT in a smart contract, and that is my unique, authentic, you know, birth certificate that can't be manipulated or changed or anything like that. Are there other ways outside of art and documentation that you see NFTs going and being used for?
Yeah, so I think you're right. NFTs, one of the benefits is the provenance. So you can always backtrack like the chain of custody of any asset that's on chain if it's an NFT. There's other verticals like financial NFTs. So you can basically wrap an NFT technology around any basically asset and put it on chain. So for example, we did a loan against a Rolex, an in real life Rolex that was minted as an NFT. There's a company that takes possession of the physical assets. They keep it safely. and then they mint an NFT on chain that represents the ownership of that asset. So for the first time, you have a real Rolex loan, like Rolex liquidity being used within DeFi. So I think we'll start to see these different types of use cases with NFTs. Like right now, it's just profile pictures and art and kind of these monkey pictures.
Right.
But it's the beginning of a big, like a broader cultural movement that's being captured within online communities. Like no way before NFTs and before crypto could online communities come together in an organized way and basically build economies around the culture that they have online. So now that's kind of what NFTs represent, but I think we're inning one in what NFTs like use cases will be used for. So it's still all being explored.
Yeah, if you're someone who say like isn't as involved in the NFT community and the crypto community and things like that, but you do have the assets to purchase one of these non-fungible assets, where do you go? Where do you kind of start in conception to then enter this broader community of possibility?
Yeah, so it's not, and that's one of the challenges of crypto and NFTs and DeFi. It's challenging if you're not really native to the space. So the first step is like crypto Twitter. That's where all of crypto lives. It's like on Twitter. So it's good to follow creators, project founders, like developers. Hop into discords of different collections that you're interested in. Find out what they're talking about. Like figure out who the players are and also how to keep the assets safe and in your own custody. So the first step would be like crypto Twitter, then jumping into a Discord, looking at OpenSea, at like all the cool art and profile pic stuff that people are dropping. And just like getting involved in the community in any way and talking to these online communities.
Yeah. Where do you find your space? Like, I don't know if I'm sure you're moving in this direction, or maybe you haven't, I'm not sure, but it seems as though Web3 is really going to this virtual world and this, kind of the meta, and everything's kind of going and being utilized within that space. Do you find, do you grow in that space as well? Do you have you focused on different, features or assets that can be involved? I'm always just curious on how companies are thinking about being involved in more of a virtual world, as it seems like it's an impending future for all of us to be involved in some kind of online virtual community.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, people sit online all day, talking to different people all over the world, and now you're seeing people come together with similar interests, similar hobbies, like similar likes, and they can find sort of their community online. And now a way to be involved in that community is to like buy an asset, a profile picture that is like an entrance to this community. And so it's like really cool. It's like people feeling like they're on a team, like they're part of something bigger. It's a way for individuals to socialize online in a way that has some economic impact also. So it's like culture and finance kind of coming together. It's
crazy. You touch on community as well, because I feel that every company is now moving into the direction of community, finding some way to not only build a product or service that's going to benefit their consumer, but also create, I don't know if it's some kind of loyalty, but it's like an ecosystem where it's like a perpetual motion machine. Once you kind of push it one direction, it continues to move and grow and expand. What ways are you pushing kind of like the community mind, or have you thought about the community mind in terms of your company and your business as a way of expanding your reach to your audience?
Definitely. I mean, I think one of the aspects of Web3 and DeFi protocols is that they're intended to be community owned and governed protocols. So instead of like a centralized company capturing all of the value happening on the protocol, it eventually is dispersed and distributed to the users of the protocol. So the users of the protocol are the owners of the protocol eventually in Web3, and then they can vote on the governance and development of that protocol. And that's really the paradigm shift in Web3, is that now you have a Google or an Amazon, and they are capturing all the value that their services are producing instead of the users themselves. So in Web3, it's the users that own the protocols via tokens that they own and control the governance and development and the roadmaps of the protocols. So it's like really a paradigm shift, and I think that's how it's going to be with these online communities. They're going to be
Yeah.
users of the protocols. They're also going to be owners of the protocols and be able to decide on direction that the development takes.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely, I feel like that's in a lot of ways the huge benefit of the space is being able to influence where the protocol is going to move, and also being that your feedback, almost like, in a democratic sense, where, your vote kind of counts in terms of the direction, your use case, and it's going to evolve and mold around ways that's actually useful. Because I feel like, as at a certain point, a lot of companies get so far removed from their consumer, and it's even more difficult to stay in tune on the ground level on what they want to, what the consumer wants out of their experience, their service, their product. So it's interesting how the community kind of already, by nature, offers that experience and that evolution. But back to the lending and borrowing aspect, because the question that I had. That popped back into my head is when I have a digital asset, I borrow against it and have a lender. Is it like a similar, loan process where there's a certain percentage that the lender makes? Like what does that experience look like? Is it any different, or is it just a new form of borrowing against, an asset?
Yeah, for sure. So if you've ever been to like a pawn shop and got a loan at a pawn shop, it's very similar to that model. Mm-hmm. So you take a Rolex or a diamond, you take it to the pawn shop, they appraise it, and then they lend a percentage on that appraised value. Mm-hmm. And if the borrower doesn't come back to pick up that asset, then the pawn shop keeps it and they can sell it and recoup their profits that way. So in the same way on Arcade, a borrower comes to the DApp, they list their item that they want to get a loan against. And a lender just comes and looks at the collateral. Pretty much lenders know what these assets are valued at. They have their own like pricing metrics that they use. But basically they click a few buttons, they fund the loan, the asset gets locked up into escrow. And if the borrower doesn't come back, the lender can claim the asset and take it.
Got it.
And then he can sell it in the market to recoup his principal.
Got it.
But if the borrower comes back, he pays interest and then, takes out the collateral from the escrow and it's back in his wallet.
Got it. So does it, in terms of the borrowing process, does it rely on the interest that's paid back to the borrower, or is it like what you said? Is it a percentage of that asset? So I have this non-fungible token. It's worth, say, $100,000. Just using random numbers here, and I want to borrow, say, 10K from that. Is there an interest on that the lender or the borrower has to pay back, or is it just that principal of 10K that they have to pay back, or is it kind of something just like unique to their certain situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically there's interest involved. So like loan to value ratio, say an asset is worth 100,000. Depending on the type of collection, like if it's a Bored Ape or a CryptoPunk, or an art blocks like Squiggle, Fidenza, there will be a percentage of that value that's used for the loan. So say an asset's worth 100,000, they might get a loan for 40,000 for 30 to 90 days at a 20 to 25% APR. That's kind of the average terms happening right now.
Got it.
So they're fixed term, short duration loans, basically.
Got it. I know you mentioned, someone used it as a down payment for their house, but what other ways are people using these loans to borrow against?
Yeah, so the other reasons are like leveraging, like simple leverage, like you have an asset, you want to buy more assets, so you get a loan on it and you buy more assets. Others are like opportunistic plays within the market. So I have an asset that's worth a lot of money, $1 million, and I see a play that I want to trade. So it comes down to capital efficiency at that point. You get a loan on your liquid assets and you invest it elsewhere. The other one, the last one, is a hedge. So if you own an expensive asset, you take out a loan, you're basically hedging your downside risk on that asset. It's like buying a put option. Yeah. If the value of the collateral drops beneath the market price, well, the borrower doesn't have to come back to pick up the loan. Now the lender is underwater on this asset.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it's sort of like a hedge, a downside hedge for the borrower.
Yeah, yeah. What? Tell me a little bit about the traction you're facing. You mentioned so far you've been able to do, I think, 500 million, or was it 28 million in terms of borrowing, in terms of loans with Arcade. Who are you working with in terms of maybe institutions or individuals? Tell me a little bit about your traction. I would love to learn like where the company's going and the direction it's going.
Yeah, definitely. So we went live with our V1 last January, and we did about 25 million in loan volume against high value NFTs. We just released our version 2 of the application last week, and so in this last week we've done about 1 million in loan volume against like Bored Apes and Mutant Apes and Punks and some art stuff. So in total it's been about 26 million of loans. In an industry that the total amount of loans ever written against NFTs is like 500 million.
Yeah.
So there's only a few there's only a few players that actually have built this infrastructure to enable this type of activity to happen.
Yeah. What are some risks that you're facing right now within the space? Is it, the fact that it's new? Is it reaching a broader audience? Is it people adopting this technology? Tell me a little bit about kind of what keeps you up at night.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everybody building in crypto is at risk to the market completely falling underneath them.
Yeah.
So there's always price risk, like market risk. We're building basically a new infrastructure that's Web3 that's built on smart contracts and code. So code is money, and so users that actually are using these DeFi protocols, there's always going to be protocol smart contract risk. There's also for lenders, there's risk that the collateral just drops in value, and they've made bad loans. But thankfully, all of the loans are over collateralized, so the lenders are somewhat protected. Such a new niche industry. There needs to be more awareness, more education, and the NFT market cap as a whole industry has to grow.
Yeah.
So, we're betting on NFTs capturing trillions in value in the next, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And with that, loan volume will also scale. And so we're trying to get ahead of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so long-term vision for the company, if you can wrap it up on where you see not only Arcade going, but maybe where it's expanding to.
Yeah. So right now we're a centralized entity that's developing this protocol, right? Eventually it's progressive decentralization such that the community is actually building and governing the protocol. And so with that comes a governance mechanism, which is usually a token that's released as part of the application. So it's like a fine line between we're building a product and we're building a protocol that we hope is used by millions of people in the future. That's what it takes. It's just we're grinding now to get our name out, to be a trusted and sort of category leader in what we're doing. And getting ready for that next hockey stick movement, which is probably a few years out. But
No, I love that, man. Bonus question I always like to ask my guests to help not only give me some homework, but also help individuals find their own inspiration. But what books or people or I guess communities influenced you the most?
Yeah, I love this question. I think a couple of books changed my life completely. One of them is Writing Without Bullshit.
Never heard.
It was just about business writing, how it's basically cutting out all the bullshit and sorry, there's a lot of background noise.
No, you're good.
So that was a book for people in business, sales, that can get ahead in their careers by writing in a much better way. So that book really changed my life. I also like Robert Greene, who wrote The Human Laws of Nature, 48 Laws of Power, Mastery. Exactly. He's one of my favorite artists, so that I think he had a big impact on my life. And I just read a bunch of other business books, stuff from different entrepreneurs, books about venture capital, how to raise it, what to do, all that stuff. So
I love that, man. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate, your experience and learning more about the space and how you're getting your name out. And a little bit on that, how can we get involved? How can we know more about Arcade and know about the community that you're building? Where can we find you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm on Twitter all day at Stanley Krupp. I have a CryptoPunk with a blue bandana as my profile picture.
Love that.
We also have a Discord, Arcade Discord, that we have our community that's engaging. Discord's basically our onboarding channel for the product. Awesome. I'd say Twitter and Discord are probably the best places to reach me at.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate having you on the show, and hope to get more involved in your project and get more people aware of what you're doing at Arcade.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian. Appreciate it.
Yeah.